Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Craig and this is the Grow Paradise Garden, and in today's video I'm going to give you my list of 7 hardy and evergreen tropical plants that are going to keep your garden looking lush and jungly for 12 months of the year to keep it looking great even in those cold winter months. Before we get into the list, I just want to say if you're enjoying the content that's coming out on the Grow Paradise channel, then please hit that subscribe button. It's the easiest way to support the community. And if you enjoy growing these plants, consider signing up to our forum. It's completely free. It's like a growers social network, and there are people on there from around the world who love growing the same plants as you. And the web address for that is www.growparadise.social. I'll put a link in the top corner and in the description. Right, let's get into this list. So the first plant on my list of hardy tropical style plants that are evergreen is this magnificent tree. Now this is Eriobotrya japonica with the common name of the Loquat Tree. Now although it's got japonica in its Latin name, it's actually native to China, and this tree is one of my favourite evergreen trees that you can grow in a tropical style garden because these beautiful corrugated thick leaves can grow up to 30 centimetres long each. Now that looks really tropical, even in those cold winter months. I've had this frozen solid in temperatures down to -5°C in this garden, and it was completely unscathed. And the rate of growth in spring is phenomenal. This has grown probably about 5 foot in the past few months. Now, the interesting thing with loquat trees is, other than obviously this fantastic foliage, is they produce flowers, small, highly scented, creamy white flowers in autumn. So around the time I'm filming this video, you can see on the tip of some of the shoots, it's just starting to bud up. Now, if we get a mild winter, these flowers will be pollinated and they'll set fruit, and it produces the loquat fruit, which is an edible fruit. It's orange in colour and it looks fantastic when they do get through winter and ripen on the tree. But in countries where we're looking for tough, cold resistant evergreens, we're unlikely to get fruit on this tree because the flowers get frosted off and the fruit doesn't have time to kind of get pollinated and fully develop. So we're growing it mostly for this lush foliage. Now, a good little tip with this foliage is, in some parts of the world, the fresh young leaves are used to make a tea, which I've not done yet, but I am keen to try. So I'm going to do that in a video at some point in the future on a cold day. I'm going to try and make a warm tea. But yeah, the loquat tree is a brilliant evergreen plant for height and evergreen structure in a tropical style garden. This is the second plant I want to add to my list of great hardy evergreen tropical style plants for you to grow in a tropical style garden that gets cold winters. It's a hybrid Euphorbia. Its full Latin name is Euphorbia cross pasteurised, and a cultivar name John Phillips. Now, as it's a hybrid, it's full of something called hybrid vigor, which means it's got the best genetics of both of the parent plants and it grows stupendously quickly. I put this in the ground at about 40 centimetres tall, and in one season it doubled or tripled that. But the good thing is it does cope with being pruned back quite hard, so you can keep it a manageable size. And if you subscribe to the Grow Paradise channel, you know how small our garden is. So I like plants that cope with a hard prune. Now this survived -5°C, that same winter as my loquat tree, and it froze solid. The leaves were hard and covered in ice, and when it thawed out there was no damage at all, which, to be honest, I was surprised by. So it's super resilient to cold weather. It grows quickly if it does get any damage, and in spring you've got the added bonus of sweet honey scented flowers which earn it the common name of the honey spurge. It's definitely, for me, the best Euphorbia to grow, especially in a tropical style garden where you're looking for evergreen plants that are going to give you really tropical looking winter interest. So plant number 3 on my list of hardy evergreen tropical style plants is this. It's Fatsia polycarpa. Now we might be familiar with the regular Fatsia japonica, which you see a lot more often in garden centres. But this polycarpa species is from Taiwan, and it has really nicely deeply lobed foliage, which gives it a bit more of a tropical look in my opinion. It's not quite as vigorous as the regular japonica, but it's definitely one that's worth growing. This was also in my garden in the recent winter that took -5°C. Now, all of the younger new growth at the top of the plant was frosted off, but the more mature foliage covering the kind of base of the shrub survived and thrived through the winter months, and I had this foliage to look at for the majority of winter. And just like so many of the other hardy tropical style plants, it's quick to recover in spring with lots of new growth. Now this one is a cultivar called Green Fingers, on account of its especially deeply lobed leaves, which give it a green fingered hand sort of look. I love it. Now I find that this copes with shade, but because of the lack of surface area, because of the shape of the leaves, it actually tolerates sun much more than other Fatsias. So if you love the foliage that Fatsia shrubs give you in a tropical style garden, but you want to put it somewhere a bit more sunny, Fatsia polycarpa is one that I'd recommend you try. Now if you can't find Fatsia polycarpa wherever you're growing your garden, one plant that you can get your hand on more easily is that regular Fatsia japonica that I mentioned. So as the next plant in my list, I'm going to talk about some variations of Fatsia japonica that you can have a go at growing in your garden. Now one that does really well in my garden is Fatsia japonica variegata. And the variegata is referring to these variegated patches that you get around the leaf margins. Now having these creamy variegations makes it a really good plant to grow in a shady spot, because these lighter markings are just helping to lift the darkness in a dark corner in your garden. So I've got this in the shade underneath the larger trees in my tropical style garden. There is another cultivar called Fatsia japonica spider's web, and it has again white variegation but in a more kind of spider's web veined pattern on the surface of the leaf, and it makes it another good candidate for those difficult shady spots. Now these two cope really well with tough shady conditions. It froze solid in that recent winter that I keep referring to, and it's bounced back absolutely fine. Now just as with Fatsia polycarpa, the younger growth froze solid and dropped away, but it quickly recovered in spring. And for me, that's what it's all about. When you're finding resilient plants that will cope with colder weather conditions, you want them to bounce back in spring and recover without you having to spend another penny. And this is definitely one of those shrubs that's going to do that for you, and it's going to have that added bonus of this really tropical looking foliage all winter long. Next up is a plant that I'm actually yet to plant out in my own tropical style garden, but I've got some ready. These are Liriope muscari, and this is a cultivar called Emerald Goddess, which is one of the tallest growing forms that you can buy. Now the good thing about Liriope is it's evergreen, and it looks like grass. It's got this lush, grassy appearance to the foliage. You get the added bonus of purple flower spikes emerging in summer, and then to keep it tidy, I just cut the old flower spikes off in kind of early winter and enjoying this evergreen foliage. Now this combines really well with plants like the Fatsia, because you'll notice in Balinese gardens you hardly ever see any bare soil. They'll use plants like Liriope planted en masse around the base of the larger shrubs, or as an edging plant at the front of beds. Liriope is an alternative that we can use in countries that get colder winters, and it gives us the same effect. Now there are different cultivars available, but I'm going to try this one because it's one of the tallest growing that we can grow. Most Liriope will spread quite quickly using rhizomes, but this cultivar is much better behaved. So I'm thinking of planting it around the edge of my steel water bowl, and it's going to provide an evergreen kind of softener plant that's going to keep that area of the garden looking lush and tropical even in the cold winter months. Okay, for this next plant we've squeezed into the undergrowth in my tropical style garden, because this plant disappears all summer long behind the herbaceous plants like the giant bananas. But in winter, it comes forward and holds the fort when everything else goes dormant. This amazing plant is in the same family as Fatsia, but it's from New Zealand. This is Pseudopanax, and this species is lautes. Now, Pseudopanax are amazing. They will tolerate frosts and short spells of freezing temperatures. Even if they lose their leaves, they're another plant that's quick to bounce back in the warm spring weather. And this one, Pseudopanax lautes, sometimes called the New Zealand five-finger, because of the number of leaflets it has as part of each leaf, is a fantastic tropical looking plant, because it has these big, shiny, waxy green leaves that form in the same layout as plants like Schefflera taiwaniana, which is another popular plant for tropical style gardens. Now this copes with shade quite well. It has the potential with mild winters to grow into an enormous tree, but in my tropical style garden it's another one of those plants that grows to a decent size above head height and above the boundary fences to create that jungle look in spring and summer. And then I can cut it back to maintain the size and keep it well behaved in my small tropical style garden. Now, if you can find Pseudopanax, there are a few other species that I'd recommend growing. There's one that's really readily available. It's Pseudopanax mower's toes. That's another really nice plant, very easy to grow and super resilient in cold weather. Or Pseudopanax arboreus, which is the tree Pseudopanax. Again, very similar leaf to this with a slightly more serrated edge. Pseudopanax is definitely a genus, if you love tropical style gardens, that I recommend you have a go at growing, because they have got a good resilience to cold weather and they've got these amazing different shapes and sizes of leaves. Now, perhaps surprisingly, the next plant on my list is a bamboo. I don't talk about growing bamboos much, especially when I'm talking about tropical style gardens, because they have earned a bad reputation, and there are types of bamboo out there that will send off runners under the fence and cause arguments with your neighbours, and we don't want that. But there are also bamboos that are much better behaved. One of them is this bamboo here. This is Fargesia rufa, sometimes called the fountain bamboo, and it has really delicate foliage, arching stems, but above all, it doesn't send off runners 2 or 3 meters in all directions. It will just slowly spread out as a well-behaved clump. Now, as a gardener who has spent many hours digging up bamboo runners and bamboo roots, I would recommend putting a root barrier around any bamboo that you put in the ground. But I feel much safer planting something like this into the ground. Now, this one, Fargesia rufa, is very cold resilient. It's taken long periods of freezing temperatures in my tropical style garden, and it's stayed looking this happy and healthy. The thing I love about Fargesia bamboos is their thin arching stems allow the plant to blow around in a summer breeze, but that is still going to be there in winter. Now, it might be more of a gust than a summer breeze, but in winter it's still going to add movement to your garden and that soothing sound of a grass-like plant blowing around. It adds movement, so we've got the thick shrubs, we've got the trees, we've got the ground cover, and now we have some tall movement in the garden. It's really going to look fantastic all year round. Hopefully you found this list of hardy evergreen plants for your tropical style garden useful, and if you have, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and sign up to our forum. There is a community there of people just like you that love growing tropical style plants and tropical style gardens. And again, the web address for that is www.growparadise.social. It's completely free to sign up, and you can post questions and pictures there. I'd love to see all of your gardens. So I look forward to seeing you on our social site. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.